cases, there are some overlaps in terms of the measures, these excellence targets, right? And those longitudinal goals. And what you'll see is that what's proposed really reflects the stretch. It's not, just the taking the next easy step. It's really thinking about your boldest aspirations in terms of where you hope to be at the end of 2027 regarding these particular metrics. Oh, you can go to the next slide. Perfect. One back. Thank you. So just as a regrounding and reminder around what are these measures you're talking about and where they come from, there are 5 goals as part of the strategic plan, as part of Roadmap 27. 1, focused on building a strong foundation. 2, looking at supporting students' well-being and inclusion. 3, looking at student voice, empowerment, and leadership. The 4th one, ensuring that equitable access to high-quality academics. And 5, ensuring that we're preparing every student for their future. Underneath the road, you'll see there's a list of a number of measures. And these are the measures that were decided upon and designed through your community-wide strategic planning process. And those are the measures when we say we took a look at those and then prioritize some for the excellence targets. Those are the measures. So you're going to see on this plan, I think there's, if I'm counting them up right, 12, 18 different measures. That's a lot to be taking a look at on a regular basis. We usually recommend that the board will take a look at a subset. And so what we're about to share is that kind of proposed subset for you to be getting regular and periodic updates on regarding the progress. You can go to the next slide. So these are it comes up, there's 10 targets that would be the kind of the focal targets. And again, these were, they include anything that was directly connected to a recommendation from the equity audit. Those are indicated by having 2 stars next to them. And then it includes some additional priorities that are connected to those long-term growth targets for Oregon and for your plan and your comprehensive plan. And then it also includes the recommendation to keep in the student voice empowerment and contribute to change, as that's kind of wasn't explicitly listed in the equity audit or in the plan, the comprehensive plan. What it does is it really kind of honors and values that impetus coming from the planning process for Roadmap 27. So these are the proposed narrowed list that would be informing the board dashboard. You can go to the next slide. And the next several slides have the targets. So I'm not going to go through each one because I want to leave time just to answer questions, and it's not to fully kind of vet and look at each of the figures here, but to give you this overview. So for example, for goal 1, where we have growth and attainment on standards in ELA and math by 3rd grade, we know our baseline coming in is that 28% of 3rd graders are meeting standards in ELA on state assessments. And the excellence target, which reflects the stretch goal, is that we will get to 45.6% of 3rd graders in Centennial School District will meet standards. And a way to really make this concrete is we're talking about this year's kindergartners. So in 3.5 years from now, we're saying that we will get this group to this spot. Okay. Another way to, for number 2, if you were taking a look at students' perceptions of safety and inclusion and belonging, the measure that we're looking at is the student survey data. And we know that the baseline survey data from last year was that 84.8% of elementary school students reported feeling safe, safety, belonging, and inclusion, and 47.7% of secondary students reported that. The target reflects 15% increase from that. I don't know why it says a 0.4 in there. I was confused. I need to go back and look at the calculations. But and then for elementary, when they're in those upper 80s, we just put to 95. We didn't put it to 100, but we kind of put 95 as the ceiling, just to kind of be transparent about that. So here, these are the excellence targets as they stand. You can go to the next slide. Here you'll have the voice, and this is again, this is perception data. Slide 4, so goal 4, sorry, has ELA, science, and math, which shows you your overall achievement in those 3 content areas for grades 4 through 12, and where we're aiming to be, right, at the end of 2027. You can go to the next slide. And this, again, is taken and coincidentally comes out this way in terms of both on track and 4-year completion rates. So that's the overview of kind of having that target set enables us then, right, to just kind of benchmark it, right? What do we want to see by the end of this year and by the next, and to see how we're making progress towards those. And this is the district roll up. Each school has their own, set of reports that they're looking at on a more frequent basis that are indicators, right, sub-indicators to these more annual measures. The last thing that I wanted to share, and Tasha, I don't know if you have this, I might share my own screen and see if that will work. If you go to the next slide, and then I'll stop for questions. We want to share with you what a sample visualization will look like if these, if we move forward these 10, right, questions or 10 excellence targets for the board. And so I'm going to attempt to share my screen just to share with you that sample. Oh, it looks like we're back in business because I see 2 of me. Whenever I see 2 of me, I know that it's working. Okay. So here's the example. I'll get the size a little bit better here. Yeah. So here is for goal 2, a sample dashboard that we can update. This is current data. It's just showing beginning of year and target. I'm sorry, not current, beginning of year and target data. So we have, just to zoom in, safety, inclusion, and belonging. You have both the overall percentage of students with positive responses and then targets for each individual question. You can actually track the questions both for, what's rolling up into that. We have it in questions that are associated with engagement. So this is survey results around engagement. You'll have your regular attenders, which is another indicator regarding engagement, but is sort of the lagging. So, and this is this year's data. So you'll see where it has June, this was end of year, is in your light blue, and your current year data, you see that it's February, so there's still a few months to go. And in general, attendance trends down. But if there can be some maintenance, there could be some movement this year. And then looking at discipline disproportionality. And so you'll see end of year last year, you had a suspension rate that was 4 out of every 20 students. This year, where we are right now, we're at 2 out of every 20 students. You actually see you see a reduction across pretty much all student groups. However, the disproportionality is still present with the same focus groups. So this would be a snapshot, right? That the board can be reviewing really for attendance and discipline disproportionality. It could be at a frequency of every quarter, should you want to be having it at that cadence. And so I'm going to stop and pause there, and definitely let Tasha feel free to expand on and share anything, but just to answer any questions and kind of taking a look at where we are in terms of setting those targets for the end of 2027 and the visualization of those.
Thank you very much, Lauren.
I do want to make
a comment about these excellence targets. There's sort of a balance between how many targets you have, the sustainability of grabbing and capturing and visualizing that data, and being able to do that at the frequency that we want it for the measures that have beginning, mid, and end year. So there's a lot here, and I would add to what Lauren said in terms of this is a very robust, well, it wouldn't be a dashboard. This is dashboard beyond. This is pretty robust when you look at the kind of data that we're presenting and think about the frequency in which we want to present it, right? Except for the annual measures. So it's something for you to keep in mind as you look at this. It's trying to provide you with multiple measures so that you can get a more well-rounded view of the progress of the district. So, yeah.
Can I add one thing that I didn't say? Behind this, in the slide deck, you would be having all of the disaggregations. So we have sort of like addendum pack that has all the disaggregations for student groups. So while it's not listed in these summary slides to give you a picture, we would be attending to any sort of focus on the equity across the system.
Thank you. At this point, are there any questions? Director Andrews.
So these are, you showed us the targets for the end of 2027. So does that mean we're not going to have annual targets per se? How will we know if we're on track? Is it just sort of one of these kinds of things? Anyway, that's my question.
Tasha, do you want to
have a
take that
question?
one, or?
So we showed you some targets for the end of this progress, or the end of this strategic plan. We are pacing that out and benchmarking it for every year. So there'll be some specific numbers in terms of the goals that we're aiming for. Yeah.
Other questions?
I don't get on this.
No. So, Lauren, please add to this. But the excellence targets were selected through a variety of processes. So we had multiple groups contribute to the district strategic plan and elevate certain elements that they felt were critical, like student voice. You saw the measure there, right? And also there were some recommendations made in the equity audit process as a result of the equity audit process. So metrics elevated from that, right? And then also we are taking advantage of the fact that we have goals specifically and targets specifically set through our plan with the Oregon Department of Education. And those are solid metrics that we would be using regardless, but that influences the specific targets that we have for our plan. So yeah, a combination of the district processes, equity audit, Oregon Department of Education requirements. Lauren, do you want to add to that?
I would say that what we've learned through going through the processes is that there is overlap in terms of what the community has asked for, what the state is looking for, and what the equity audit indicated as a need. And that where that significant overlap has been is sort of elevated, right, to the shorter list of targets that we would track our progress. There are measures that are part of the strategic plan that the cabinet has said that they do want to and intend to measure, for example, access to pre-K, developmental milestones, students' completion of performance assessments connected to the portrait of a graduate. But they've gone through a process of timelining what it's going to look like to determine how they're going to measure that and when they would have that base, when the new baselines would be for that data set. So, and I didn't hear the question, so I'm hoping that was on point in terms of
Question was, how do we select
responding.
the excellence targets?
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Primarily, it's goal setting based on areas of need and requirement and recommendations. And from the goal setting, then we look at the various variables that
Yeah, and they're straight from the strategic plan. And they're the ones that were emphasized through the equity audit. I can't hear anything. I'm sorry.
Know that we are speaking to several different, if you will, masters of what we want to accomplish. Things that we've engaged ourselves in, right? I mean, we did the strategic planning to find out what our needs were. The equity audit, very clearly something this district has placed a high priority on. And yet, the state of Oregon is going to say, and you will, right? And so I want to know, when I'm looking at this, that, yeah, we've been guided by our own internal processes, and yet we have an external process that will dictate what we will be reporting. So didn't see it, and just a matter of a reminder for ourselves, that little note, by the way, we are gleaning and doing these things because. And I think that because we have a person over us, the Department of Education, that's an important piece that we need to continue to remind ourselves of. Anyway, I guess I needed the reminder of it, maybe not, but I need that background. It's like, oh, that's right, that's why it's like, why did that come up as an elevated area? Oh, because we've been trying to do all of it in one singular process. And I think that's important to note how hard everyone has worked at this to try to meet all of the requirements that we have as a school district that are not just our own goals and ideas.
For that, I agree. It wouldn't be necessarily apparent to someone viewing the data that this is sort of a amalgamation of all these inputs to determine goals and then metrics towards those goals. So it's a good reminder as we put this out to make sure we explain that. So yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Please.
Were you asking us how frequently we want to see the results? I know you said something about pulling this together quarterly or whatever is not. I still am interested in your feedback to us about what you think the cadence for reporting to us should be.
Great comment. There are measures that are only annual, so even if we provided this report on a quarterly basis, you would still see that same measure. But there are measures that are mid-year and, or can occur beginning, mid, and end, just to keep us aware of how we are progressing and truly use it as a monitoring tool. So we haven't gotten into the weeds of how frequently we want to provide this. Logically, it makes a lot of sense beginning of the year for everyone to get their bearings in terms of what we said our targets were and to remind people of what the metrics are. And middle of the year for the measures that have mid-year points and of course end of the year. So it makes a lot of sense to do trimester, but with the caveat that we have targets that are annual. So we'll have that noted in our report. So yeah.
How often are you guys administering the student perception survey?
It's another great question. So the annual survey is at the end of the year, and we have what we would call progress monitoring student surveys. They are selected, strategically selected questions from the survey this year that align to individual schools' improvement plans. So in some schools, they have safety or belonging as a particular goal, I should say. Don't think safety, belonging. And so they went into their survey and selected the questions that were indicators of belonging, and we used those questions in what we would call sort of a student perception progress monitoring survey, which we've been administering once a term. And then they get that data at the district data summit for their school, and they can then tweak their action plan to. Yeah,
That's
work
great.
with those.
Thank you. Any other questions? Go ahead.
I know, we talked about this earlier when it was related to the, the state, the Department of Ed. And one of the things, Director Callahan had talked to us about, yeah, I'm putting you on the spot, there you go, was that the, like, why isn't the excellence target 100%? Why aren't we doing, all of these things? It's because, we want 100% of our students to be able to do X, Y, or Z. And yet we clearly were schooled on why we need to be, there's aspirational and then there's goal setting that we move towards, right? That's the other thing I don't see necessarily. I have to remind myself, that's right. I can only see a 45.6% because that's realistic. That's what we know about moving such a challenging area, right, in terms of an excellence target. How do we reflect that so that when I'm looking at this on a Centennial website, I'm not going, well, darn, why aren't they, pushing it and asking for more from their students? I think it would be helpful to, again, and maybe it's, I don't know how you keep that and yet keep it small and visual and all of those kind of things, but I have to be able to say, well, point to that asterisk, point to that note, point to whatever it might be that informed me as to why, and that I can then say to my neighbor who's thinking about not putting their kid in a public school, it's like, because what, look at you don't have the excellence goals, right? That kind of crud that people will do. I would need to point somewhere. Where do I go to help me understand? Poor Director Callahan.
So, one, I appreciate the feedback, and I think you're asking for us to take a look at that and figure out how we can communicate it, correct? Yeah. I was looking at it earlier today, and just as I was listening, and this is our first go-around, right? And so this feedback, I think, is really helpful, because in my mind, I was like, I can see it because I did the work, right, in terms of the LPGTs. So, but you're right, an asterisk or something, but then even some definitions, I think, like the state uses basic, like what we're all supposed, the targets that we all are supposed to hit, and then the gap closing. And the gap closing is really essential, right? That's how we're going to get better. And so I equate that, in my mind, I was equating that with excellence, right? Because for the state, the term they use is stretch. And stretch is kind of like bonus. If you get to this point of the gap closing, great. There's another target that we've also have, which is called stretch. So just information that way. When I think excellence, I think gap closing.
Thing that's being required of us is new to a degree, right? And so they're going to be watching. I just want to make sure we're doing it as best we can as it relates to
Yeah.
the outside requirements.
And I'm confident that we're like the work of the strategic plan and the work of the LPGA, it's there. It's around our intentionality to elevate it in such a way that people understand.
I also think there's a way to provide just enough, not overwhelming, but just enough information about the background of how we generated these targets, whether it's informed also by the state or not. There's a way to do that. You just have to think through that. I can visualize it if it's on the website, you know, hover over a metric and then it gives you a little bit of background on how we got that metric. I'm not volunteering anyone for anything. But if there's a way to do it, or on paper, if there's a way to do it, it's just, yeah, I hear you when you're talking about being balanced in terms of overwhelming people with too much information, just enough so that they can understand the why behind the numbers. So thank you.
I just appreciated Director Callahan's reference to the LGBTA tour. That was her mnemonic device to remember the LGBT. She told me last year that's how she remembers it.
I just want to thank you all. This is such a wealth of information, and the way that you guys are organizing it and making it easy to digest for us is really appreciated. As someone who sees a lot of unorganized data, this just makes my heart sing. Like, I'm like, oh, it's very clear. Like, and so I just appreciate, Lauren, you, especially all the work that you've put into this and in the creation. Yeah, thank you very much.
I want to thank Director Wright and Callahan too for all their hard work and collaboration.
Yeah.
And Lauren Clapp, so thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, Lauren. Thank you.
Thanks, Lauren. Next up, we have the 2022-2023 audit report with Director Southerton.
Thanks for persisting, Noah. I know it's been a
Great. Good evening. I'm happy to introduce Laura Caceres, Compliance Manager for the district's outside audit firm, Bolly Rogers and Company. Oregon law requires the school districts and other local agencies at our spending level to complete annual financial audits. And Laura is here tonight to share the findings for our 2022-2023 audit. Laura, I'll turn things over to you. Oh, just a moment, Laura, we're not hearing you.
Looks like we're having some audio issues on our end, so just bear with us.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Thank you. Any questions?
I did want to say one last thing. We did have something new this year, Gatsby 96. Once again, want to say thank you to Paul and his team. They did an excellent job trying to implement that into the financials. That was very challenging to many school districts this year. And Centennial, thank you. You did a great job. So that was it. Basically, it. I have nothing else to report. So unless you have anything else, or if you have any questions, I can just say good evening.
Thank you very much, Laura.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Good work, yeah.
Director Southerton and your team, you just a great job. Thank you for yet another year of unmodified opinion. I am so glad we're not in the same situation as the Portland Public Schools in terms of putting the budget together for next year. And this just supports that we're ready to move forward. So it's great. It's great to not have to be making the kinds of decisions that they have to make this year.
Yes, Centennial Transition Center building.
All right, pleased to be back with you this evening to talk about the new Centennial Transition Building Improvement Project. Sounds like Noah's taking care of the echo, so. coming through, but is it coming through now? Okay, great. We are getting some echo now. Okay, give it a try. We still have some echo, so I'm gonna put the mic just a little bit further away, see if that takes care of it. So overall, we have the purchase price, and then we have the remodel cost, the additional rent of overlapping efforts of remodeling and still renting before we can move into the building. So direct costs of about 1.5 million, and then we have the opportunity cost. So it's going to take the 1.5 million to purchase and renovate the project, the building. What could we do instead? The lost opportunity cost you have to measure as well. And so that would be if the money was sitting in the bank for over 20 years, we would potentially gain $1.75 million in interest. I say potentially because we don't know what interest rates are going to be. They were sub 1% for better than a decade. Now they're normalized, but will they be that for the next 20 years? It's hard to say, so just an estimate. But overall, looking at the gain of 4 million, the cost of 3.25 million, you see an overall financial monetary gain for the district of $750,000 by owning versus renting. And that doesn't count, for example, the other impacts, positive programmatic impacts for the program. So stability. This program has been housed in 4 different locations at least over the last 20 years, maybe more. Underneath the bleachers in the stadium for a period of time, a rental home, another rental property. So, you know, the stability in programming, you know, is huge for obviously the work that we're trying to do and build there. The impact on the community, so revitalizing a building that has not been used in our own community within our boundaries for the last 4 years, hopefully helping to improve that area as well. So among the financial gains, there's also other non-monetary gains of doing this. So the administration's funding recommendation to pay for this is the board reserve account. There is a current balance of $5.8 million in the board reserve account. It was $6.25 million prior to the purchase of the property. The current estimated balance as of June 2025, if we do nothing, is just over $6 million. That takes into account the 5.8 plus a $72,000 projector payment. You may recall that the board approved loaning money to purchase projectors, with the projectors being paid back over time rather than going into debt to replace all the projectors at the elementary schools or buy them on a lease as we may have previously done. We also anticipate over the next year approximately $150,000 of interest being accrued on the balance in the board reserve account. It is in an interest-bearing account. The cost of improvements being up to $1 million, that would take the estimated balance as of June 2025, so June next year, down to $5 million. And of course, there's the option to repay the $1 million or the $1.4 million that this project requires with the savings from rent over the next 20 years. So, for example, and I'll yield to the board on the recommendation, but you could potentially pay, $70,000 a year that you would have paid in rent back to the board reserve account to replenish, essentially loaning ourselves some money. And with that, I welcome any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Director Southerton, questions? Director Harden,
I have
please.
a question. It's kind of for Denise. Is this going to set up the program, CTC program, for a while? Is this what the program needs? Is this going to set you guys right?
It will set us up. We won't have to move any longer. It'll be set up with the intentionality. Thanks. It'll set us up with the intentionality of what the program should have versus just making a space work, which has happened in the current places. So, and a bonus with all of this is it's 2 blocks away from where we are. So proximity to all of the access within our community is still really familiar. So it minimizes the interruption to program planning because everybody is really familiar with that part of town and can just pick up and roll once they get all moved in. Yeah.
Other questions? Please.
How do you put this maintenance issue in the budget? When we get together as the budget committee, how does, when you do something like this, how does it get rolled into the current documents?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So very similar to how we did the stadium complex improvement project at Centennial High School. So there is a page in the budget book, and there is an appropriation adopted in the budget resolution for the board reserve account. And so we're getting the estimates together. What you saw were architectural drawings or early renderings of what the architectural drawings will look like, right? That goes through a costing exercise before we put it out to bid to give us the budget. And then we'll allocate those funds in the board resolution. We will, of course, when we have the budget meeting, we will walk the budget committee through our recommendation and our proposed budget. This is what's in the general fund. This is what's changed from last year. These are how we're supporting the priorities that you all gave us. These are some additional things. The bond is winding down. ESSER is winding down. We've purchased a property for the Centennial Transition Center program. You'll see that it's funded out of the board reserve account on page, 163 or whatever page it may be, and so we can call that out for folks. But, yeah.
Lynn?
Well, I'm just looking at the remodel and hoping that we can realize some savings with some grants, opportunities. Looking forward to talking, working through with that. Can you speak to the pros and cons of, you said, with the payback? If we were to pursue that option?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to offer an opinion on that. The board reserve account was established, intended as a safety net and also to support one-time expenses. So it's non-recurring money, and it was funded with one-time money from the sale of surplus property, never to happen again, right? And so it's expended on kind of one-time expenses, not ongoing operational expenses, because it would create a cliff and it would run out. So this fits very well with that. This is a one-time opportunity to purchase a property for a program that is the only program in our district that runs out of a rented space. No other school, no other program doesn't own the space that we're in, right? And it's moved, and we've heard about how it's been kind of handled over the years. And out of necessity, I don't make a judgment on that, but it was not given the space or built with the intention maybe that it warrants or deserves. And so this is a great opportunity for that. Now that's separate and aside. That's the utilization of funds. Now paying it back, how would it be paid back, which is more kind of to your question, I believe, is currently in the general fund, we will pay rent on the property that we're in of $6,000 for the first half of this year per month and $6,500 for the second half because our lease renews in June. So looking at that, you have around $75,000 a year that is currently allocated for rent out of the general fund. So this would be just transitioning that funding and paying it back to the board reserve account, which would then replenish the board reserve account for other future one-time events as well that we that you all want to invest in, because it is a board reserve account. Does that kind of speak to your question, or am I dancing around it too much? Or?
It's explaining it. I'm also trying to kind of do the math, like how much interest do we lose over the 20 years?
Excellent question. So this would just be paying back to principal.
Yeah.
Excellent question. This would just be paying back to principal. So if we went back to the slide of the 1.5 million of cost and 1.75 in lost interest, so 3.25 of total cost, this would be paying back the 1.5, but it wouldn't be paying back the lost interest necessarily of the 1.75. So we would still have that, and we would have the $4 million from above. So it would only improve that $750,000 financial gain. If we paid that back, it would now turn that into a 2.25 million financial gain, right? Because you got back 1.5 million of the dollars. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Great. And so that's just a philosophy. I think that these are one-time funds, and if they're going to be used, we should have a way to get them back. And you all have adopted a board policy on a reserve account to have a minimum fund balance, and so this is a way to ensure that is built back up and we don't end up in the trouble that we were in a few years ago financially. So excellent questions. Thank you, Director Lynn.
Any further questions? Thank you very much, Dr. Southerton.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we've got the superintendent's report. Superintendent Owens, I'll turn it over to you.
Do you want to plug in, James? Do you have a, this one?
I'm nervous. I'm trying to buck the trend tonight. I'm afraid to talk and get an echo or project a screen and have a glitch. All right, greetings board members. It's my pleasure and privilege to share with you an update this evening about the happenings in our school district. There's a lot happening, so you'll see quite a few topics covered, but I will try to make it pretty brief because I know there's been a lot of information tonight. It was good to see Directors Andrews and Lynn and Chair Solowski last Wednesday morning at the Classified Appreciation Breakfast. We were able to recognize our support staff members by hosting a breakfast at Centennial Middle School where breakfast burritos from Don Pedro were served. It was a pleasure to honor our classified colleagues for their dedication and service to our students, staff, and families. Classified staff serve in a variety of ways throughout the district, keeping our schools functioning smoothly. The contributions of our classified staff make a profound impact, and we are truly fortunate to have such an exceptional team. So it was nice to be able to share a token of gratitude with them alongside some of our board members last week. You'll see a graphic on the screen here and some pictures that went along with the breakfast that we had. So thanks to those of you who were able to attend and recognize our support staff. Speaking of our classified colleagues, successor contract negotiations with the Centennial chapter of OSEA continues, with the most recent session having happened last Wednesday, March 6th. The teams have reached agreement in concept and are working on contract language for several articles, as you can see reflected here on the screen. The dates throughout the spring have been established, and you can see those also reflected on the screen. So that's really just to give you a broad picture of progress to date. And these are items that are all reflected in the joint communications that have been shared so far, so there's nothing new or proprietary that's being shared here. I want to give credit to the teams for their positive and productive initial sessions. On the screen, you can see a picture of the team from the most recent bargaining session last week, and I appreciate Chief Rosales Correa helping with the picture because I took the picture and I cut somebody off from it, and so he did a nice job of helping clean it up, I believe. Thank you for doing that. You can tell when I take a picture because I don't take everybody. Cut somebody off. Ooh, yes. All right. It was nice to see several of you yesterday for the ribbon cutting ceremonies for the new gyms at Meadows and Powell Butte Elementary Schools, 2 of the 4 gymnasiums that were built through the 2020 Capital Projects Bond. Joined by Directors Stanley, Andrews, and Lynn, as well as Vice Chair Shields and Chair Solowski, we had the opportunity to recognize key individuals and groups whose contributions made these flagship bond projects possible. As a special touch, suggested by Director Andrews, guests to the ceremonies were greeted by the Centennial Middle School Band at Meadows and the Centennial High School Band at Powell Butte. Tomorrow, we will commemorate the completion of the remaining 2 elementary school gyms with ribbon cutting ceremonies at Patrick Lynch Elementary at 4 and Park Lane Elementary at 5. Kudos to Chief Communications Officer Albert Rosales Correa for his coordination efforts. Much appreciated. Speaking of bond projects, the special 2020 Bond Summary Edition of the report to the community was published and mailed to all district residences last week. I trust that you've received yours, and if you did not, that you will let me know. And I've provided each of you a hard copy this evening as well. I think during the break I was talking with Director Andrews about the mailing to those who live in Clackamas County, because that's a little bit of a different process there that takes a little bit more nuance. So we're underway with making sure that those get mailed out as well. Please note that the newsletter also contains a link to the 2020 bond pages on the district website where readers can learn more about the projects that were completed with the voter-approved funds. A special thank you to former Chief Communications Officer Cassie Swenson for her coordination efforts of this project. I got my slides backwards. As you know, alignment is a key feature of our strategic planning process. Each individual, school, and department making progress in the same direction, working in concert towards collectively established outcomes. To that end, as part of our strategic plan Roadmap 27, led by Assistant Superintendent Dr. Katsuda, we've held a series of sessions with department leaders throughout the district to develop departmental plans. That means that all of the district's departments, such as technology, transportation, dining services, maintenance, business services, student services, curriculum, communications, and human resources, have developed a specific plan articulated to Roadmap 27. At today's collaboration session, as you can see here reflected on the screen, department leaders work to develop slides for a presentation we plan to share with the board next month to feature the work that each department and summarize the work each group is doing as it relates to the overall district plan. We look forward to featuring their work next month. Speaking of Roadmap 27, finally, after several iterations, we've landed on the graphic you see here, and you also have a hard copy on paper to summarize our strategic plan Roadmap 27 onto one page. This graphic will be converted into a 24 by 36 poster that will be prominently displayed in each school so that our school and district community can gain more familiarity with our plan. As I said, I provided a paper copy for each of you this evening. A new poster should be here, ready to see on the wall by the door, right over where Director Callahan is where it normally goes, sometime shortly. And I'm realizing that I was supposed to show a video of the ribbon cutting. So let me get back to the ribbon cutting. And kick this in here. And hit play. Yes, I've gotten hit by the technology gremlins today, too. Well, you can look at the visuals that are on the screen. And you can imagine what it sounds like.
The ribbon cutting ceremony for the Meadows Elementary School Gymnasium. Let's give another round of applause. This is one of 4 brand new elementary school gyms that we are celebrating over the course of this week. This afternoon, we recognize the vision
I invite any questions or comments you might have, and that concludes my superintendent's report.
Thank you very much. Comments, questions? Please.
I just wanted to say the gyms looked amazing, and the special touch with the rims and the backboards matching the color of the gyms was really amazing.
Yeah, I agree.
And it was really a pleasure to go to the breakfast for the staff. If there's anything I can do, the staff just has that thing so well planned. I kind of want to sit there and like, how can I serve? But they've just got the system down. But if we can brainstorm on something, I would love to help serve the teachers on those breakfasts.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we'll keep that in mind. One thing that we've done before is we've done breakfast burritos, but not pre-done and not through a vendor, but done them in-house. And all the components are kind of on a serving line. And then we've had administrators and board members serve, so that maybe we can go back to something like that.
That'd be great. But those were great burritos too.
They were.
I was going to talk about the breakfast too. I'm really happy that we had an opportunity to interact with people, because last year in the drive-by, it was kind of, well, it was cold for one thing, and for another, it didn't give us much chance to chat. So it was really good.
It was great seeing those kids over at Meadows. There was one of the fifth graders came up to me and said, "I recognize you from the YouTube thing." And I was floored. So I don't know if Lisa's been preparing them and showing them videos or whatnot, but it was so fun to get to see the kids and how excited they were with the gym space too. All right, anything else for the good of the order? Thank you very much. We will move right along to confirmation items. Can I get a motion to approve all the confirmation items?
So moved as presented. Second.
All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Since we do have an executive session, I just want to check the pulse. Do we want to take care of the action items really quick and then take a break before executive? Perfect. Yes, we do. Of note, Missy, the board action item 7.1.2 will be moved into a future agenda. And welcome back, Director Southerton.
It's been so long.
Yes. What are you here to share with us today?
More great news. So we are recommending the approval of a guaranteed maximum price agreement in the amount of up to $2.1 million under the existing CMGC contract for construction for the Powell Butte Seismic Improvement Project. So you may recall the district was awarded the Powell Butte and Seismic Improvement Project of $2.5 million last year, which we accepted as part of the budget process, and we have been in the design and planning. The board has previously approved ZCS as the engineers and has previously approved Emmerich Construction as the construction manager general contractor for the project. Now Emmerich has bid out the work, and now we're approving the actual construction. So that's the $2.1 million. It is up to $2.1 million because that is the budget for the project that we have allocated for that portion of the grant, and we are still tabulating the bids and putting together the guaranteed maximum price contract. So part of the process with CMGC, construction manager, general contractor, is you bring them on early, so they've been with us for several months in the design, in the engineering, and they take it out to bid. So it's not awarding them the work, it's all the subcontractors that they put out this competitive bid, and then they package it together into the formal guaranteed maximum price contract, which they manage and oversee. So we are transparent about the construction budget with them, not with the subcontractors. So the up to $2.1 million is known to them, and that's why what we need to hit to do this project. Just in case you were wondering, you know, do you tell a contractor what your budget is? You know, we want them to come in lower. You don't want to tell them they'll, you know, hit that number. Again, it's not them actually doing the construction work. They're managing. They're the construction manager, general contractor for this process. It's recommended that the board of directors approves the award of the guaranteed maximum price agreement in the amount of up to $2.1 million under the existing CMGC contract with Emmerich Construction Company for the Powell Butte Seismic Improvement Project. I welcome any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. I'd love to hear a motion.
Move that we approve stuff point 1.1 as presented in the board notes, so I don't have to read that.
Second.
All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Has passed. Thank you very much. Anybody have anything in the way of future agenda items?
I always do.
I know.
You want me to go?
Anybody else?
Yeah,
Please continue.
I'll go. We've got a Centennial Middle School school report coming up after spring break. A strategic plan update, as I referenced in my report. We will have an orientation to the different department plans that are aligned to Roadmap 27. Consider approval of the mechanical award for limited mechanical cooling at Oliver Middle School, Powell Butte, Park Lane, and Patrick Lynch elementary schools. We will also take up the boundary request the board received information about at the last board meeting. Consider approval of the science curriculum adoption, and then possibly a few policies. So coming into April with another beefy agenda.
All right. Anything else for the good of the order? Meeting is adjourned at 8:35 p.m.